You've heard bad political arguments. Not just arguments that you disagreed with, but arguments that used debunked pseudoscience or conspiracies you knew weren't true, or values that normal people don't adhere to. Did you look the other way? Did you bite your tongue? Or did you speak up? Professor Lawrence Torcello, in On the Virtues of Inhospitality, argues we have an obligation to speak up in the name of public reasoning. Now, this argument is cast within the realm of public reasoning, and public reason was a term and a concept popularized by John Rawls, 20th century American political philosopher. This is his first book, A Theory of Justice, known as TJ by political philosophers. And in the Rawls canon, he argues that humans suffer from the burdens of judgment, and this combined with our respect for others should lead us to endorse public reason. Now, what are the burdens of judgment? The burdens of judgment simply refers to the fact that we lack complete knowledge. We are imperfect reasoning machines. It is the case that we make mistakes. As philosophers would say, we have epistemic limitations. When we realize it's the fact that everyone has these epistemic limitations, this helps explain the fact of reasonable pluralism. The fact of reasonable pluralism is the unavoidable fact that human beings, provided the same information with the same intelligence, are going to arrive at conflicting conclusions on questions concerning the ultimate nature of the universe, moral questions, religious questions, metaphysical questions. It's just a fact that there will not be a consensus or a convergence on the truth. Even if there is a truth, humans will continue to disagree about those matters, and they'll continue to disagree due to the burdens of judgment. And Rawls argues, and Torcello agrees, that when we recognize that we're imperfect in this way, and when we respect other people, we should be committed to public reasons. Now, what are public reasons? Well, these would be reasons that anyone should be able to appreciate regardless of their comprehensive doctrine or lack thereof, so regardless of their background or their religious commitments. And these would include scientific facts that enjoy scientific consensus, or at least the best consensus we can get, as well as shared values. And in America, those would be values such as liberty, equality, the public good, fairness. This is an illustration of individuals within faith communities discussing matters with non-public reasons. And so these Christians, they're discussing premarital sex, and they're referencing the New Testament. These Jews, they're discussing whether they should work on Saturday, and they're referencing the Torah. And these Muslims, they're discussing whether they should eat bacon, and they're referencing the Quran. This is appropriate. This is fantastic. These reasons, citing these religious texts with other members or other adherents of these faith communities, is appealing. It has logical purchase for them. However, when members of these various faith communities offer reasons to members outside of their community, and especially when they discuss public policy matters, now they need to offer public reasons that anyone should be able to appreciate. These would be, again, reasons that enjoy scientific support and evidence and justification, as well as these shared values, rather than these non-public reasons which are only useful and appropriate within the religious communities. As Torcello explains it, or as he puts it, our claims ought to have no communal influence absent reasoned justification. If you agree that we have an obligation as citizens and as public officials and as politicians, just as persons, to offer public reasons and to justify our policy preferences and even to think through policy questions from a public perspective, if you agree with all that, Torcello argues that we have a corresponding obligation to also call out people who don't adhere to those norms. And he makes this argument via an argument by analogy. He references a play. And in this play, there's a community that offers healing baths, these miracle baths, to tourists. If you have arthritis, or if you have cancer, if you have AIDS, any condition, we will heal you for $5. It used to be 10, now it is only 5. Dip in our healing bath. Let us cure all your ills. However, there's a physician in this community that knows that not only is this healing bath ineffective, in fact, it's toxic. It contains pollutants. So not only does it not do what it's supposed to, but it's actually harming these people. Now, the doctor has a dilemma here. His dilemma is, hey, our community is flourishing financially. We've got all these tourists that seem to be having a good time. If I speak up, I'm going to make some powerful people angry. I'm probably going to lose some friends. I may anger some patients and lose business as well. However, the physician reasons my silence makes me complicit in this harm. The fact that I'm not speaking up sends the signal that this is okay, that I endorse it, that I'm okay with it, I'm cool with it. And perhaps the tourists would look to a doctor who's not complaining and infer from that that this is medically sound. The doctor decides he doesn't want to be complicit in this. He doesn't want to be blameworthy in this way, and so he speaks up. Torcello argues that if you find this argument compelling, if you find this argument compelling, you should also speak up when people don't adhere to the norms of public reasoning. When people, for example, cite pseudoscience or hacks, when they pretend to be experts in areas that they're really not, if they cite the evidence from compromised experts, if they cite values that are only defendable from the perspective of a comprehensive doctrine, you need to speak up respectfully, politely, but firmly, and Torcello argues aggressively. One objection that he considers in the article is that, is this not anti-free speech? He says, no, it's not at all. He says, I'm not arguing that we should put people in jail who don't adhere to public reasoning. All I'm arguing is that we should self-police voluntarily and kindly and politely, but firmly in this way. So he's not saying that you can't discuss matters using non-public reasons with other members of your faith community, or it could even be a philosophical comprehensive doctrine, such as Kantianism. Kant had a metaphysics and an ethics and an epistemology. You could have people that say Kant's way is the only way, blah, 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 categorical imperative. That's cool, but you can't base public policy on Kant's categorical imperative without an additional public justification that would appeal to people who are not Kantians, because there aren't very many Kantians. And even if there were, there are going to be many non-Kantians. In order to respect them, you need to offer a public justification, not just a Kantian justification. But in any case, Torcello wouldn't say we should put Kantians who speak out and offer justification in public for public policy in this way in jail. He would just say we should kindly but firmly confront them. And he argues our obligation to do this is stronger if we're members of certain groups. For example, scientists. For example, politicians. For example, members of the press. For example, members of the clergy. For example, educators. And when it comes to educators, philosophers have especially powerful burden, an especially powerful obligation, because we have what Torcello calls these analytic skills. We understand what the reasoning fallacies are. We know how to formulate arguments, to dissect arguments, to show where arguments go wrong. If we've dabbled in political philosophy, we understand this argument in favor of public reasoning, and so the burden on philosophers is especially powerful. And the way he puts this for all these different groups is that he says, quote, "It is morally imperative for those who have greater access to the public to robustly ethically condemn all breaches of public reason in political discourse. Failure to do so does not respect freedom of conscience or freedom of speech, but instead enables oppression and intimidation." That last point about intimidation, that's one reason people usually don't speak up. That's one reason people usually keep their mouths shut. And I myself have been guilty of this. There have been many times where I've recognized a political argument in social media or in polite conversation or in public. I've just simply not said anything because, similar to the doctor, I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. I didn't want to anger any friends, any powerful people, any potential readers. I've got books out there. I don't want to alienate half my audience. I can imagine, and I recall Daniel Dennett. He's a public intellectual, a philosopher who was very politically biased and very politically outspoken and in a very aggressive way during the last presidential election and right after it. And maybe it's the case that he was making good points, but he was doing so in such an overly hostile fashion that I'm sure he turned off a lot of people that he could have influenced if he had taken a more rational, reasonable, more low-key and respectful approach. J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, she was also very outspoken around the time of the last American presidential election, and I'm sure she scared off a lot of readers as well and probably lessened some of her influence if she had taken a more reasonable and respectful approach. So my own thoughts on this, one, I do need to be more outspoken. I do need to challenge non-public reason when I can, but learning from my own experience witnessing Daniel Dennett and J.K. Rowling, I want to do so in a respectful fashion. So if I do call you out in a gentle, though firm and respectful fashion, or if I call out the arguments of someone that you tend to identify with, know that I don't mean any disrespect. And if there's anybody I should blame, I suppose it's John Rawls and also Professor Lawrence Torcello.